Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Extra Shift. I'm Chris here, as always, with Brendan. How are we going?
Good. I love that we've had such a kind of off-kilter playoff so far, with several series on one side finishing in 4 and others going to 7. It's just been a weird schedule, but we
The
managed to
series that
time it
started
correct.
early was the last one that
Yeah,
finished.
it's wild. We managed to actually kind of like nail the timing of it this time, and actually get right between the end of round 2 and the start of round 3 tomorrow.
I was
So
so
big
impressed
claps
that
for us.
we managed. I was like,
Definitely
oh, this is
intense.
going to go weird. This is going to weird. We
I was
managed to
just
do it.
hoping it wasn't going to finish on the weekend. I was just like, oh man, I'm
That
busy.
would have been hard.
Yeah, but it is episode 233. So welcome. There's some notable 33s. Anyone stand out to you?
Well, I always look for players that acquitted themselves outstandingly well in the teal, obviously. And when I think of Sharks, and only a Shark, I think of Marty McSorley. A man who was a
It's the only
journeyman.
notable reference of the
Look, Marty
NHL.
McSorley was a journeyman for a majority of his career. I believe he played in some part of northern Canada, and then he was like sent. He was sent to California, but I think he was playing like a minor league team in California. Briefly to Pennsylvania, but I don't know what happened there. And then the Sharks came a calling,
Oh,
and Marty
so
McSorley.
career really turned around.
And like, well, it's a Hall of Fame career, obviously. It's like Marty McSorley.
Yeah.
He's like, so I think legendary Shark Marty McSorley. That's my man.
Yeah, and a legendary Hall of Fame name, Zali Zalapski, as well. Like
Oh yeah.
that's an old timer. We do have a few Hall of Famers in the 33s, though. Patrick Waz and Aaron Chara, and just some guys,
Wow. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
well, wow.
he's
But
a man who hilariously has been linked to the Leafs job at one point, which is really funny. Him doing that was
incredible,
hilarious.
incredible. But of course, someone who will come up later in the episode, Henrik Sedin. But we'll get back to him.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be. There's a couple of links that are going to be in here, and look, obviously we screw around a little bit with these. My favorite, just to go back to this, my favorite is when I might have referred to in the Australian NHL fans page, and Brendan remembers the pain that followed this when I got onto somebody's post and I and I referred to Martin Brodeur as St. Louis Blues legend.
Yeah, they were very upset.
And my word,
did not get the joke.
They came for me, and I held firm. I just continued to sell. He played for St. Louis. He was a St. Louis Blues legend, and yeah, the Devils fans did not get the joke. Did not think it was funny, and just kept. What are you talking about? He's a legend for the Devils. No, he's a Blue.
I wonder how they feel about Sharks legend Carey Price.
I mean, Sharks legend Carey Price is Sharks immortal forever.
Yeah.
I mean, send the jersey to the rafters. He's yet to lose a game as a Shark, I'll have you know.
Yeah, Arizona, legend Pavel Datsyuk.
Yeah, Pavel Datsyuk. What a career he had. Can't fault any of the starts that he had.
I love that. I love that there's been so many contracts that have changed teams several times after the player stopped playing. So they've technically been on the books of like 3 different teams after like 6 years after they stopped playing.
I mean, we had, from memory, we had Shea Weber as well.
Yeah. You've had some real Hall of Famers in your.
We've had some great Hall of Fame
long-term IR.
Yeah, we've had some fantastic Hall of Fame careers come through. Absolute amazing money. Anyway, let's get on to the episode, shall we? Because I did just want to start with that because, like, I know that there are some people like, well, what? I'm like, nothing will ever beat that. It's one of my favorite moments as an admin of the Australian NHL fans page was doing that and then just watching people come for me. And it was about 2 hours of just solid boom.
Yeah.
Anyway, to make everyone happy and give everyone a change of pace, let's talk about the Leafs because we don't talk enough about them.
There's only positive news about the Leafs.
They finally decided to part ways with head coach Craig Berube. Now, as shocks go, this should not be a shock. And yet the narrative being put out by people like Drager, for example, and who knows who was saying to Darren Drager that they thought Craig Berube was a fantastic coach and should probably be back. I don't know Craig Berube, but somebody was very, very bullish on the idea that Berube would be back. And after the conversation, Friedman started leaking out the other day that apparently the Leafs were looking at not a retread as a coach. That meant that Berube's time was short-lived. By the way, Berube has been allowed to speak to the Edmonton Oilers. So we could have the funniest thing ever. Let's look for Connor McDavid's defensive zone starts. It's going to be a defensive zone player. That's the good news for Leafs fans is Berube is gone. We'll start with the Berube stuff. So I think we both agree that Berube's style of hockey doesn't really work with that core of players, or you could argue any core of players. I don't think you can repeat what happened in St. Louis.
Yeah, I mean, like, St. Louis has a particular style of, like, I feel like Berube may work in the old Columbus, like not the young Columbus that they are now, but like the Columbus of like 5 years ago. Like, that's the kind of like, that old LA team,
which
like
is ironic given who's currently coaching Columbus.
Yeah, like the those kind of teams that a bunch of like grinders who are just putting pucks in corners and winning battles or whatever. Like, that's kind of it. That's kind of not today's NHL though.
No, it's I think that for me the big thing is that Berube, and we said it when he was hired, like this is not an afterwards take. We both said the same thing, which was if you go and examine that cup, Ryan O'Reilly decides for a couple of series that he's the best player in the league, and Binnington decides he can stop every puck that's ever moved.
Yeah,
and that is literally the cup. That's the cup, right? There's a bunch of teams that just can't seem to work it out. Boston are everyone forgets how overconfident Boston was going into that series, right? Boston went into that series just going, well, it's us. Like there's no way we're losing to St. Louis. And they kind of got jumped. But it was just some outstanding goaltending, a freakish goaltending. And O'Reilly decided that he was great. And by the way, it's the last time that he really did decide he was that good.
It was kind of towards really the end of his career. Like he had like higher peaks of his career prior to that, and then had been kind of quiet for a couple of years, and then just basically was like, "This is my chance."
And then segued it into a bunch of contracts elsewhere.
I mean, and basically, Binnington has really kind of like ridden that for like really the rest of his career. Like, no. I mean, he's never reached that peak again.
Well, this year, remember, he was so bad this year that the conversations were about moving him out. Because
I mean, that's been for a few years. That's not really new. Like, he's been slowly losing the starter job for basically 3 years now.
But he's still
for some reason is the first choice for any Team Canada goalie position. I don't fucking know why. It's not like they haven't got other options. But it's like,
it's like they're kind of like the Binnington thing. I think a lot of it is they were like, well, who's going to take on $6 million? $6 million is reasonable for some of these teams. I don't understand that, but it's not so much the contract.
I mean, Edmonton took on that much.
Well, look at
Harry's contract.
Part of my thinking remains with Edmonton. We'll come back to Edmonton a bit later, but part of my thinking with Edmonton remains that if you were going to give that money and that trade and take on the contract of Tristan Jarry, why not just move a bit more cap out and take on Jordan Binnington and be done with it?
Yeah, I mean, like he's the kind of
more of an upside.
The people who are willing to pay to like trade for him for sure.
But I think the problem with Binnington it was not so much about the $6 million. I think it's that nobody believes that he can do that anymore. I think that's the problem. But nobody wants to say that in media when they talk about him, so they blame the cap. But be that as it may, Berube came in at a very specific time and a very specific moment, and they really had nothing. It was an absolute free swing. And they get into the playoffs at the very end and they squeak through all the way. And then Boston is really overconfident and they jump them. Now, if you believe all the hype afterwards from, again, I'm going to say Drager, I wonder who Darren Drager's friends are. I'm shocked. I don't know.
Can't work it out.
If only there was a pathway, because Darren Drager talks a lot about what a motivating great man Berube is. And again, look, there's no one doubts the toughness of Craig Berube. Again, as Steve Dangle pointed out on his podcast, the man dropped a weight on his head in the gym, got stitched up, and came to the game and just went, "You're going to ask me about it? No, you're not. Anyway, move on." And everyone went, "Yes, sir." But he's not a hockey coach for this day and age, and especially not a team that, even though they wanted to get, as they put it, snot, still has a lot of talent on that roster. And like, who goes and turns one of the greatest goal scorers of his generation into a defensive start center?
Yeah.
Like,
the wild thing is, though, like, with all that we know about the NHL, do you really believe that this is the last that we've seen of Craig Berube in the NHL?
Well, I'm 100% convinced. I'm 100%.
He will absolutely have a job next year.
I'm 100% convinced he's getting hired in Edmonton if they don't. Probably. If Cassidy doesn't get to talk to, and we'll talk about Bruce Cassidy a bit later.
Yeah.
But if Bruce Cassidy is delayed for talking to them, I 100% think that Edmonton would go out and hire Berube.
Oh, yeah.
I have no doubt in my mind that that's something they're thinking about. Like, they asked to talk to him. Now, they might just be treading water until they're allowed to talk to Bruce Cassidy. But in the meantime, you also suspect that maybe there are other teams who have a job opening that might go, "Hey, Bruce, how much do you want? You tell me how much you want, we'll pay you." Interestingly enough, though, as I said, Frege started to leak that they are looking at new. They don't want to retread. And that the plan is that they're going to go with somebody who has not coached in the NHL. There's only a couple of names that are sort of jumping out at everybody right now. So I'm interested to see where this goes. We're going to start hearing.
It's nice to see. It's nice to see people actually getting a chance and not just being the same 4 or 5, guys cycling between open job positions. That's a nice change of pace.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see who they interview. I think we're going to get some college coaches. I think. We might get some assistants. There's a few assistant coaches, but I don't know where they're going to go with this. David Carl keeps getting mentioned, and teams have been trying to get David Carl out of the American university system for years, and he's never moved. And like, he's got a good thing going in Denver. It's going to take a lot to convince him, I think, to come to the NHL. But I don't know, offering him a team with Austin Matthews and the first overall pick, whoever that may be.
I mean, look, it's definitely a good, head start. Look, I think that it's hard. Like, I get the safety net that GMs have of choosing a coach who they kind of know what their NHL, career looks like. They have a concept of, they know what they're going to do when they get here. I've kind of seen what their results look like or whatever. I know that they know how to coach in the NHL. I get that there's that comfort zone or whatever. Like, there is, a gamble in hiring a coach who hasn't coached in the NHL before. Sometimes you get a Dan Hughes, sometimes you get a Mike Johnston, and it doesn't work out. Manages to shut down Sidney Crosby, the only player, who's ever been able to, basically
by the way, I will never forgive the Penguins for making the coaching change.
Yeah.
I will never forgive them.
Yeah.
Cost me a cup.
Yeah. So look, it's I get it. I get it from that perspective. Especially like, with so many so many GMs who, that like that coaching position thing is your bullet. Like, if things are going badly for you, you can fire the coach, you can hire someone else. But if you bring in a guy who's your pick and it goes badly, that you don't always get a lot of options to do that. However, it is nice to see new thinking actually come in and just not have the same pack of 60 and 70-year-olds just cycling through the 32 jobs in the league.
Look, it'll be interesting to see if they do it. again, as I said, I think the concern for a lot of people is they don't believe that they'll be able to get David Carl out of Denver, that he's just not going to let go. And look, he has complete autonomy over that program. He can do whatever the hell he wants. Like he does whatever he wants there. He's going to go to an NHL team and possibly, well, not possibly, definitely forfeit that. And then if it doesn't go well, what happens? So like, there's been a lot of remember when David Quinn came out and went to New York, and then it didn't quite work, and then he went to San Jose, it didn't work, and that kind of killed David Quinn.
Look, from a human perspective, people have, these coaches have families that they need to pick up and move from, move countries basically to.
And if you're in a top college program, like nowadays, especially with the way that NCAA money is, and obviously it's more for basketball or in football than it is for hockey, but it's still everyone talking about the fact that like one of the things that's helped turn American hockey around so much is the university programs are outstanding. If you are in a top program in the NCAA, you don't really have to go anywhere. They're paying you enough money.
You can be pretty comfortable.
You can just stay there for as long as you damn well want, and you're not going anywhere. So I think it'll be interesting. I think the bigger story out of Toronto is not Berube. Brandon Pridham mutually agreeing to leave the organization, which I think is not a surprise given that he went for the general manager's job and lost out to John Shaker.
Yeah.
If I'm Brandon Pridham, I'm leaving the organization too. I also, the head of player personnel, Derek Clancy's also leaving. That just screams to me that Shaker's bringing in his own guys, which there was a lot of talk about. We mentioned it last podcast that Shaker had reached out to two people to do those roles before he was hired, so it wasn't tampering.
I mean, it does tend to be the way that, like when you come in as a new GM or a president of hockey ops, generally, you want to have people around you that that you work well with. I definitely understand that regardless of what Pridham has done in Toronto. But I do wonder what the over-under is on Pridham ending up back with his old mate in the Pittsburgh organization.
Well, I mean, he turned it down originally.
Yeah.
He turned it down originally. Now, is Kyle doing both roles?
Yeah, pretty much, as far as I understand.
I mean, does Kyle feel like being a president of hockey operations?
Yeah, I mean it's possible. I'm curious to see kind of what happens going forward, and let me check what the structure is currently.
As far as I'm aware, he's both.
I think it did shift at some point. I know that he still does, essentially make all of the GM kind of decisions. He is still a general manager technically. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm certain that he would be interested in having him on board. I'm curious whether or not Pridham, is aiming higher. Like, given that he's applying for GM roles, is he going to hold out and apply for some other GM opening, in the near future, rather than coming on board in a lesser role in another organization?
I think it depends on how fast Pridham wants to find himself back in work. Look, the man has a CV that teams would absolutely covet. But when we say he wrote the rules, he literally wrote the rules on the cap.
Yeah.
So, like, if you want to know how to work the cap, Brandon Pridham's your guy, because he knows it, and that's what you want a general manager who's good at.
So looking at the structure now, Dubas is president of hockey ops and GM, and we have Jason Spetzer in the assistant GM. Role.
I think, and look, I don't think Spetzer would have a problem with being jumped by Brandon Pridham, because the three of them worked in tandem in Toronto, and I think that works quite nicely, because I think eventually the aim would be that you'd bring Pridham in, and have him work with Kyle, and then Kyle maybe even gets a title that's even above president of hockey ops, and Pridham slides up, and then Spetzer moves in. Spetzer has said it a number of times, he's not ready yet for general manager. He wants to wait a few more years for that. So I think that it gives the perfect opportunity there. It wouldn't shock me. I did say last episode as well, somewhere like Nashville. I mean, it feels like Nashville's the sort of organization that takes a chance and would go they made Barry Trotz their general manager. Like seriously, they'll try anything. So I think that would be a smart move. I'll be interested to see what happens in Toronto now as well with Pridham, because like Pridham was very good with cap and very good at manipulating those sorts of things. We're in a situation now where the front office for Toronto is untested completely, and a lot of rumors and innuendo about, people don't like them, people don't want to work with them. Some of the dumbest things I've ever heard, by the way. Oh, people won't answer the phone when the general manager rings. Yes, you do. If you don't like him and you think he's an idiot, you answer the phone more.
Yeah, you have him ready to go to
There's
be like, yeah, what do you got to do, dickhead?
When Tom Fitzgerald would ring somebody, there's a reason they always pick up.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, Fitz wants to make a move. Yes, please.
Yeah,
I'll take that phone call. Like Mike Greer has not once hung up on Tom Fitzgerald. Yeah. Not once has that man hung up on him. Speaking of weird, unusual moves, the Aquilinis, let's talk. So this is for all of our Vancouver fans out there. There's lots of you. Francesco Aquilini announced the Sedins as co-presidents of hockey operations.
I love that they just do everything together.
They can't be separate. They can't just have Daniel or just have Henrik.
I just imagine them sleeping in single beds in the same room, getting up in the morning, going into brushing their teeth together. It's wild. It's wild.
They can't be apart for more than 30 seconds. It's ridiculous. But co-presidents of hockey operations, they're not conjoined.
No,
not like they share a brain.
They can do different roles.
Is it scissors paper up? If they can't work out a decision.
I mean, obviously, so much of this is appealing to nostalgia. In a team that is at a for a team that's been on the bottom of the barrel for such a long time in terms of enthusiasm for the team, the up and downs of that, they're at a pretty low at this point in time. I can understand the appeal of bringing in a Hall of Famer, from the past, two Hall of Famers from the past.
Francesco Aquilini saw Toronto and went, "I've got two."
Yeah, I've got two. Yeah,
you can do Sundin, but I've got two.
Yeah, I mean, look, every team has this bullshit where they bring in ex players, who want to get into front office, kind of situation. We just talked about, Spencer in Pittsburgh. Also, Trevor Daley is there as well because he was on the Cup team.
I mean, Mike Green was a Shark.
Yeah, there's a bunch of that shit. Every team has that. But president of hockey ops is a pretty serious role to put the Sedins into. I know that they have been working with them for some time I don't know what the hard thing is. I think we talked about it in the last episode. When you get hired as an assistant to the general manager or a special advisor to the general manager or something like that on a team, that could be anything. That could be that you actually turn up in a suit every day and make serious decisions about the team, or it could be that you take a call once a year and turn up for a press event and then pocket a salary in the way that you get paid off for the rest of your career or whatever for just turning up to sign autographs or whatever. I don't know what the actual role of the Sedins has been in the organization for the past few years, whether it's been more the latter or the former, but I guess they've been making significant decisions if they've been pushed into a role above the general manager.
Oh, speaking of general managers, by the way, Ryan Johnson. That situation was nuts. So it looked like he wasn't going to be the general manager. Then suddenly he was. So that whole situation was utterly bizarre because the initial reporting that came out was that obviously that he was the favorite. So it was really weird because we had what was the official way it was worded, because there was a sort of, it wasn't an official press statement, but the conversation was that they'd sort of, first of all, Pierre Dorian put himself front and center and told everyone that he was going to be the general manager. And then, who was it? Who was it? What's he interviewed for all the different jobs? He was going to be the next one. I can't remember his name now. I've gone blank. It's been a long week. But then when the number came through for what the contract was, it was apparently lower than it was lower than 750. And they were like, we're going to pay you nothing and you're going to earn a bigger contract. And that was what the conversation was. And at that point, it was Evan Gold. That's right. Evan Gold. So Evan Gold had been linked and Evan Gold was about to be named. We got a full thing from insiders going, it's going to be Evan Gold.
Yeah.
And they offered it to Evan Gold, who then, when he saw the contract offer, went, you're kidding me. Like, he was being paid less than he's being paid currently. And went, no. And they went, oh, no, you're going to earn a better contract by doing a good job. And he went, like hell I am. And said no. So they gave it to Ryan Johnson.
Right.
Now, again, like, he was the internal candidate. They believed he was the guy all the way along. I feel pretty bad if I was him that I got it kind of
by default.
Some other guy went, you're not paying me that little. And now I'd really like to know what he's being paid.
But I can't imagine that it's significantly more.
But as you were talking about, like, you're talking about this idea of like legends around the team, there are right ways and wrong ways to do it. And like, I think that, I mean, as you said, we talked about it last podcast as well. That idea with, if you've got a sort of elusive title and you can just float around and just be a legend and make statements and people go, he knows what he's doing. That's great. Once you've got an official title, it's a little bit different. Right. And you're actually going to have to start being critiqued on hockey knowledge. And how do we know who's making those decisions out of the Sedins and what decisions they are making? What decisions is Ryan Johnson being given power for? You can't imagine that if he says something and the Sedins say something, that the Sedins lose out. Like, you cannot imagine there's a situation where Ryan Johnson
effectively they're his boss. Like,
well, that was like the conversation in Toronto is if you've got a conversation and John Chaker says one thing, but Matt Sundin says the other, whose voice carries the weight? And they never answered the question. At no point did they answer that question. It's a bit like, again, not to crap all over the Oilers again, but we're going to crap all over the Oilers again. Go and look at that Oilers staff. And if you want to know why the Oilers have so many problems, like very recently, do you remember who the Oilers very recently reappointed their coaching staff? Paul Coffey.
Oh, right. Yes, of course. Yeah. He's back. Is he like their defensive coach or something wild like that?
He's just an assistant coach.
Oh, okay.
No official title, just an assistant coach. Also,
oh, that's right. Keith Gretzky is there.
Yeah, I was about to say.
That's right. Yes, I forgot about that.
They couldn't get Wayne. They couldn't get Brent.
Yeah. Paul Coffey is technically an assistant coach. Special advisor to owner and hockey operations. So special advisor, like, this is the thing. Once you put special advisor at the start, that could just be that they have your phone number if they need you to turn up to sign a fucking autograph.
But Paul Coffey's now got the ability. So this is this is the thing. I think that's ridiculous because Paul Coffey is a coach, but also a special advisor. So when they go, what's wrong with the team? Let's talk to the special advisor who's a coach.
It's wild because if you go to the front page of their hockey operations, it says assistant coach on it. And then when you click on it, it says special advisor to owner and hockey operations. Which one is it?
No, he's both. He is both. If you check it up, he's both. So Paul Coffey, as an assistant coach, had more power than, as we're going to talk about, Chris Knobloch.
Yeah.
Right? Has more power. He's an assistant, but he's also got the ear of the owner. Like, come on. This is ridiculous. So this is what we're dealing with, like, with this idea of you could go really well having the legends around. And like I will say, and again, I'm biased, the Sharks do it well because Marlowe and Thornton and all that are around the organization, but they're largely there for the vibes. And they're there as... One of the things the Sharks always had was that tone setting around the arena and around the rink. And they kind of do that. They just at the practice facility all the time. They'll train with whoever. They'll give advice to whoever. But they also stay out of decision-making. Right? They don't get involved. The only one who's a past one, the only two, sorry, who are past Sharks who really get involved are obviously Mike Greer, who's currently the general manager, and Nabby as the goalie coach. That's it. That's it. Right. I think this has really got potential to go badly because I think a structure where you've got a 2 and then a 1 and you don't know who's got power. And again, realistically, the answer is Francesco Aquilini has the power.
Yeah, that's the thing, really. Yeah, well, I mean, like, who has the power between Henrik and Daniel if they like disagree on something as well? Are they equal? Are they like
Also, can I just point out? Can I just point out as well that with all of this, I've got a bit of a. We talked about it. I joked about it before because we're gonna we needed to talk about obviously Ted Knobloch got fired. Adam Foote was relieved of his duties. Scott Young, Kevin Dean, so basically the entire coaching staff in Vancouver got fired. Yeah. Not really a shock. Adam Foote getting hired was a shock. So he should never have been hired in the first place. I'm wondering if that's not where Berube ends up.
Yeah.
Aquilini loves this idea of a tone setter, right? Remember, we talked about it last podcast. He let JT Miller rip his young locker room to pieces in the name of setting tone.
I mean, given that they're probably going to clean house on any talent that they have there too, that might not be the worst fit.
Yeah, like Berube is going to be the other one they've talked about, and this is really interesting, is Manny Malhotra. Manny Malhotra's name has come up 3 or 4 times, and he is apparently someone they are very interested in. Now, obviously, that is very important given what's happening in a couple of weeks' time with the draft. And at the moment, a lot of people have mocked to Vancouver Caleb Malhotra. So there's potential to bring Manny Malhotra in as the coach and draft his son.
Yeah.
That's a start. That's going to be really interesting. If they bring in Manny Malhotra as coach, I think it locks in who their draft pick is.
I mean, that's awkward too, though. Like, if you're about to get drafted to an NHL team, do you want to go into a locker room where your dad is the coach?
I wouldn't. I would not want to be near it.
It's gotta be hard to gain the respect of your teammates.
My father was the manager of my soccer team growing up, and that was tricky enough.
I mean that's awkward. Like, you've already got the kind of concept of favoritism, being in the organization, let alone if your dad is the actual coach.
Oh, that would be
yeah, it's awkward as shit. I mean, like, probably, like, he's not going to be in the NHL.
The thing is, or anything, but the thing is that there's a lot of talk that they're going to draft Malhotra anyway. There's a lot of talk they're going to draft him. That's sort of if the 1 and 2 go as they should, which would be McKenna and Stenberg, then third, Vancouver probably won't draft the defenseman. They'll draft the center. If they draft the center, they're drafting Malhotra.
Yeah.
Which means that 4th and 5th will end up with the defenseman, which the Rangers will be thrilled with that. Yeah. That, again, it depends on the Sharks and the Leafs doing the obvious thing and not going off the board. By the way, if you've been listening to the draft coverage at the moment, don't bother. No, everyone. I have seen 15 different boards. Not one of them is the same. And everyone is trying to say, but what if it's not him first?
What if it was different?
Like Corey Pronman, who, by the way, has a really good track record with the draft. Corey Pronman's one the other day was purely for the lols.
Yeah. Like, I mean, he seems to do this, I think, every year, about a month out or whatever, where
and then correct.
Like, just kind of throws it out. Yeah, I mean, look, just wait for Bobby Margarita 3 days before the draft to tell you what the whole fucking draft is going to be, because he's talked to all the GMs.
Bob rings in from the cottage and goes, "Yes, I'm retired, but here's the order," and then goes.
Yeah, here's every draft in the first like top 20 or whatever. I've talked to all the teams, and this is who they're picking.
And then goes away. Also, could I just say my last point on this before we move on is that I've really enjoyed all of the Twitter people online who are putting out who says no trades because they're all ones that everyone says no to. I had one the other day. Which was a Calgary. There was someone from Calgary who put out a who says no trade for the Sharks, and it might be the worst possible trade I've ever heard of. Hang on a minute, I'll read it to you. This was the trade, right? To San Jose, the 2027 first, top 3 protected, 2026 Vegas first, Hunter Bruzovich, Konazari, 2026 New York Rangers second, to Calgary, second overall. Who says no? And everyone went, the Sharks?
Yeah,
who
that's
have
interesting.
second overall? We're not.
I mean, yeah, I just don't know what's appealing to the Sharks about having an amuse-bouche of picks when they already have such a locker.
And the other thing was too, his point on that trade, by the way, was that would give Calgary 1, 2, and 6. And I'm like, yeah, because if you're taking 2, like hell, we're not taking 6.
Yeah.
It's like people
like we're moving down to like.
It's like people suggesting the Rangers might try to trade and not trade 5, and also not trade Adam Fox.
Yeah.
No Adam Fox and no 5, and they want the Sharks second. And it's like, yeah, one of those two things is coming back for a start.
Yeah,
probably Adam Fox. All right, let's get into the most important bit of news from this week. Flagrant violations. So, as we talked about last time, John Tortorella is speed running his career. Now, the Torts strategies, for those who aren't aware, the Torts strategy is he comes in, he makes everyone feel really good about their life. He tells the players they're amazing and wonderful. He creates a tight bond within his room. He then decides the best way to do this is to make an enemy on the outside. So he creates an enemy on the outside that they can all bond against. Once he's created that enemy, he goes back into the locker room and goes, it's us versus them, and makes the players want to fight for him by, we've got to beat that enemy outside. And then he gets himself in trouble with the league. He doubles down on it. He gets in trouble. His goaltender eventually has a really shit goal average. He gets fired. Yeah. So that's the career. We're up to the bit where he's in trouble. So,
I mean, he also hasn't had good goaltending up until this point, but they've somehow won anyway.
Yeah, and don't even. People are going, look at Carter Hart's record.
They keep fucking playing Carter Hart. I do not understand why.
They go, oh, look at his save percentage is way up in the last couple of games. Yeah, not because of Carter Hart, but because they didn't allow a rebound to get past him, because they just collapsed the defense on top of him. So every time he stopped the puck, he didn't let the rebound in because there were 2 defensemen standing there going, mine. That's the only reason. Having said that, and also Carter Hart shouldn't be there, whole other story. But the bigger issue is Torts is speed running his career.
Yeah.
So in the time he's been in Vegas, he's made everyone fall in love with him, talked about how he's a humble guy. He's learned a lot from his mistakes. He's learned a lot about hockey. He loves bringing in the vibes. This is a great group of players. You've seen photos of lovable Torts in the locker room making everyone feel great about themselves. Then last week, he picks a fight with the Toronto media. Out of nowhere. Nobody questioned him on Marner. Nobody said Mitch Marner was anything at all. Nothing had happened. And then he just starts taking shots at the Toronto media because that's the best way to get a fight going. And it works. And everyone engages with it because it works. And then he doubles down with the weirdest thing I think I've seen him do.
Yeah.
There was no reason at the end of that game 6 for him to decide that the players needed to all bugger off and go.
Yeah, like they won that game. Like it would have just been all cushy, like spend 5 minutes with the media, like saying how great everyone was. And he's like, no, we're not doing that. Go to the bus and we're leaving. Like, fucking wild.
Sends Marner and what's he out there to have the conversation. And they're like, we're worried he's going to leave.
Yeah.
We think the bus is going to leave without us.
Yeah.
I don't know why he decided to pick the fight. It's dumb. Look, I could understand the Toronto one because he wanted to fire Marner up.
Yeah.
I get that one. I understand it. It was dumb. The Toronto media is stupid because they fell into it and decided to give it 4 days worth of press cycle. And like literally everyone started writing articles about, well, was Mitch Marner the problem? Is Mitch Marner overrated? The Leafs got screwed over in that because Mitch Marner's suddenly good again. Mitch Marner was good when he was in Toronto. Mitch Marner was always going to be good when he left Toronto. Nobody thought the problem was Mitch Marner was bad at hockey.
Yeah.
The mix didn't work and something had to leave that mix. Marner was the thing that they could get rid of, really. And also, looking at it from a cap perspective and everything else, Marner was probably the one you wanted to deal out of those three. That was probably the right move. And he was the one who was also most likely to go. So, like, all of it made sense for everybody. Then for Tortorella to decide after winning a game 6 and winning a series that it was all about Mitch Marner in Toronto? What?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
It's wild. It doesn't make sense to me why he chose that of all times to take a stand against like giving any kind of press coverage. But anyway, the league announced that Vegas would forfeit a second round pick in this year's draft, and Torts himself would be fined $100,000. Vegas did appeal those punishments, but the league, for once, decided to uphold them. I honestly thought that they would get the pick back, but no, they didn't.
I thought it was a really, again, you know, I have my problems with some of the stuff that, for example, Adam Wilde says. I think sometimes he's hot take central.
Yeah.
One of the things they said on the most recent Dangle podcast that I did agree with was, as Adam Wilde put it, he goes, "This is." If they have to overturn this one, this is the beginning of the end of Gary.
Yeah.
Because if he gives that punishment out and then gives the pick back after they gave the pick back to Ottawa, punishments no longer matter. And if that happens,
and it's felt like that.
If that happens, Gary Bettman has no authority anymore.
Yeah.
So
I mean, for the most part,
they appealed it to
say,
Gary. Now they appealed it to Gary, so Gary found in favor of Gary.
Yeah, of course, which he generally always does. Like in terms of like player, any kind of player suspensions or anything like that, he always upholds his own league's thing for you know, understandable.
Now, part of this issue is that there's been a lot of people have been getting angry about the fact that, you know, they've done a lot, Vegas, and they always seem to get away with it. And every time something happens, there's no punishment. And, you know, it has been pointed out by people that Vegas got punished more for this than their current starting goaltender was punished, really, for what he was involved with. We're not going to get into that because I'm sure there will be people from that right-hand side of politics who will be arguing all sorts of things about him being innocent, etc. Read the testimony. No one says he was innocent. Anyway, but be that as it may, this is a different situation. The NHL didn't get them for one instance. They referred to it as flagrant violations, multiple. And they had also said that they were warned multiple times. Now, there's a lot in this, and a lot of it has to do with Vegas are not popular with anyone. Like, they're not particularly popular around the league. There have been polls done now and all sorts of... Roto World did a whole thing the other day, which Vegas media picked up, that the Golden Knights are regarded as the least popular franchise in the NHL, the least liked franchise in the NHL. Some people go, oh, they just win. Not really. It's because it's something that Brian Burke said, and at the time everybody laughed, and we sort of even said, you might be a little bit off base, but I don't think he's as off base as everyone thought he was. I think he's off base in terms of who's upset. So Brian Burke said that no player is going to want to go to Vegas because look at how they treat them.
Yeah.
Right? They first chance they get, they dispense of them. Don't care. Contracts mean nothing. Now, I don't think the issue is necessarily the players, but I think the issue might be agents. I think the issue might be other staff. I think the issue might be sponsors. I think the issue might be the league looks at Vegas and goes, that's not, no, you don't run an organization. No, you don't run an organization like that.
Yeah.
And I think when we might see, especially with John Tortorella in the chair, like you can't imagine, to be blunt, I don't think you can. You think that Gary Bettman is really happy with the idea that one of the coaches in the Final Four is John Tortorella?
No,
there is no way that Gary Bettman is happy about that. Right now for some people who are like, well, it's working because look at where they are. You would expect Vegas to make it probably this far. Like you would expect. Look at everyone.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would be shocked given,
Everyone's been
if
doing
Bruce
it.
Cassidy was still in the role, that they would be in this position.
Well, everyone's been doing it with Carolina, and we're going to talk about the series coming up, obviously. And everyone's, oh, but look at who they've had to beat, and blah blah blah, which is all garbage. But genuinely, look at Vegas's playoffs. Who have Vegas faced so far? So first round, could Vegas have really been given more of a sort of straightforward pathway?
Yeah.
Like everyone knew that was a straightforward pathway. And they didn't make it straightforward. Like they weren't brilliant. The Ducks had their big moment against Edmonton, but the Ducks also are defensively still not great.
Yeah.
And Josh Dahl had his probably worst game of his career, I'd suggest, in one of the later games in that series. He was absolutely abysmal. Vegas, yeah, like it's not. If you want to talk about a powder cake sort of schedule, it's been a powder puff schedule. It's theirs. And I'm interested to see what happens because we'll get to it in a minute. But they're about to run into a buzzsaw, and I'm fascinated to see what happens in these. We'll talk about those more in a minute. But I think as well, the other thing that plays into it is the Bruce Cassidy stuff.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a big thing because so many of the other stuff that they've done up until this point has been like, it's been easy for people to look at it and kind of go, oh well, they're just they're doing what they have to do to win. They're doing it, like the Cassidy thing. So not to like jump in too much ahead of it, but like I feel like this is maybe one of the hardest things to
let's get into it.
Justify.
Let's get into it. So,
so basically at this point in time, like I don't know the exact wording, but like officially Vegas haven't given their consent for other teams to speak to Bruce Cassidy.
They have not given permission for any teams to interview Bruce Cassidy for head coach's job.
And to be clear, this I think that I saw someone clarify that this doesn't necessarily mean that they have refused.
Yeah, well, it's been further clarified that basically it's been clarified. There was an extra statement from Vegas this morning where they tried to say that Cassidy's cool about it, which I don't think he is. But it was that they haven't denied anybody permission. They're just very busy with the playoffs.
Yeah. So they've basically just left teams on red to, as to whether or not they're allowed to speak to the guy that they fired several weeks ago, who still has 1 year left on his contract with Vegas, but obviously is no longer in the role. And it's funny because, like, technically this is something that you're allowed to do as an NHL team. You don't have to give permission for other teams to talk to someone that that you technically still have under contract. It's just kind of generally considered to be like, well, why the fuck would we pay this guy to stay home? Like it just feels like an incredibly dick move to be like, no, you have to not coach in your career for the next year. You have to sit at home and not be involved in other NHL teams because we're still paying you for it.
So I think this is the dumbest part of any form of agreement. The idea that once you are fired as the coach, because we have to pay your contract out, you can't interview with someone else without our permission is a ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
What should happen is you pay. So it should be like in Premier League football or those sorts of things, European football, right? You sack a manager, you pay the contract out, right?
Yeah,
you work out a financial arrangement. It's not necessarily even the full contract all the time. Sometimes you negotiate a deal, but you pay the contract out. Once you have paid the contract out, they can be hired by anybody.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want them as coach. You fired them. Imagine you go to your job, you get fired, and then you cannot work for anybody else because, well, we fired you, but there's you had a contract with 2 years left on it, so we're just going to make you sit at home for 2 years.
Yeah,
And
I mean, look, I'm sure that there would be some people that will argue, like, "Oh, what's the problem? They're going to get paid for the next 2 years for doing nothing or whatever." But like, being an NHL coach is not quite the same as like working the checkout at Coles. You, if you don't work for a couple of years in the NHL because you're still technically under contract, it makes it harder for you to get your next role. Whereas if you are in this position where obviously there are other teams who are interested in hiring you right now, staying actively an NHL coach is a much better thing for your long term, career. So it is damaging to Bruce Cassidy to not be able to get another role that he could potentially, get immediately. He could be hired tomorrow by another team, but Vegas have just decided, oh no, it's not in our best interest to let him do that.
what I find really interesting too is that you could almost, I think it's wrong in either way. You could almost let them get away with it if they said to, for example, Edmonton and the Kings, no, but then said to Toronto, yes.
Yeah.
You could almost say it because, oh, well, it's in division. Maybe, okay, they're letting him talk to some teams. They don't want him in division. I still think that would be a dick move, and I still don't think it should be
Yeah.
allowed. But if
No.
they were at least allowing conversations outside of, then you could almost say, okay, I get it, right?
Yeah.
I get what you're trying to do
Yeah. I
here.
don't like
you're
it, but
not,
I understand.
and you're not stopping his career
Yeah.
completely. You are saying yes to teams that aren't within your division, right? I could justify it as much of a dick move as it is. You could sort of go, okay,
Yeah.
you jerks, but you are going to let him continue his career somewhere else. They're just not letting him talk to anybody. And
No.
like the Coaches Association, I think one of the interesting things, and it's about the most ferocious that the Coaches Association gets, it would be unprecedented at the head coaching level should multiple teams be denied permission to speak with Coach Cassidy. That is as close to who the fuck do you think you are as
Yeah.
you're ever going to get from the Coaches Association.
You very rarely hear from the Coaches Association. Like that's
Our
that's
priority is
pretty
to
wild.
protect the interests of our members in this type of circumstance. That
Yeah.
is the Coaches Association warning Vegas, look out.
Yeah.
So I think that also plays into all of the other penalty stuff with Vegas. I think the NHL's like, you are giving us far too many bad headlines right now.
Yeah.
I think there's an element. So there's an element of what sometimes it's referred to as the dumbass tax, and you're paying the dumbass tax, and you've just stacked all this stuff on top of each other. You're now paying a dumbass tax.
Yeah. I mean, look, and I think that all of this, I think, adds up to a bad opinion of Vegas from both a player perspective and a coach perspective. If they're looking to hire a coach in a year or two, which is very likely with the way the Torts goes, if you're the top candidate in the league available at that time, and you have the choice between going to Vegas or to somewhere else, do you have a second thought about Vegas and kind of go, well, maybe I'll sign a 2-year contract there, but they'll fire me after 1 year and then they won't let me go to another team, versus this other team that I know doesn't do that. It's just these little things kind of adding up to just be like, do I really want to deal with this organization who have proven again and again that they'll fuck people over for a small advantage?
The funniest part of this remains the fact that Tortorella is contracted only for these playoffs.
Oh wow!
He is only contracted for the last 8 games of the regular season and the Stanley Cup playoffs. He is not contracted beyond the playoffs.
Wow!
So we could be in the funniest situation ever. First of all, imagine that Tortorella is, that Vegas go, we don't want Tortorella back, and decide they want to go somewhere else. And another team's got the ability to do this to them.
Well, we could be talking about this in a week's time. Like Vegas could get swept, and then then Tortorella's out of a job, and they don't have a head coach.
That could be really funny. The other thing could be like this could be the other funniest scenario out of this is that Toronto lose. And although I said this to you the other day, I messaged this to Brendan the other day. The funniest part about this is, the one place where John Tortorella might actually work? Toronto.
Yeah.
because us versus them
Yeah.
in Toronto,
Yeah.
like the one place that Torts actually might make sense, and having the go at the Toronto media probably just endears him to that job even more.
Probably. Yeah. That's
I'd
pretty
laugh so
perfect.
hard if Torts gets fired after this run and finds himself in Toronto and goes, "I told you all you were dicks," and then turns around to the players and goes, "Look at these jerks. Look at them."
I think that we will like you will never see a more combative relationship between coach and media if he was in that role. Like they would just be like Steve Simmons and Tortorella would just be taking shots at each other out of the window of their cars.
That is sensational. I hadn't even vaguely considered Steve Simmons versus John Tortorella on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
I need this to happen. I need Tortorella.
The things that Steve Simmons will make up about him would make your grandmother blush.
And you thought, I guess that's what I'm saying, Brooksy was tough.
Yeah.
No. We've got enough. I need a weekly sit down with Steve Simmons and John Tortorella. Podcast. I will pay behind a paywall for that one.
Yeah. They will actively get in a boxing ring on a weekly basis together.
Oh, that could I now need that to happen. But that would be the funniest thing. That would be the absolute funniest thing ever. The other funny outcome here could be that they might decide to hire back Bruce Cassidy.
Yeah, that would be hilarious. They'd be like, no, we're just hiring. We're just renting Tortorella for a few weeks.
We rented Torts. We figured you needed a break.
Now you're back.
Also, before we get into the playoffs, just quickly before we get into the playoffs, Matthew Schaefer won the Calder for best rookie. That was quite a touching presentation actually, where they brought the trophy out on TV and had his family there, and obviously, losing his mum, and talking about the role that his family's played in sort of getting him through those really hard times, and it was a lovely moment, and real emotion.
Yeah, and well deserved, really. Like I think Schaefer probably wasn't a lot of people's picks coming into the year, and really kind of put his head and shoulders above everyone else for sure. So
yeah, I don't think it was close anyway.
No.
Speaking of not really close, let's get into some of the playoffs. So some of them were close, some of them weren't. Now, the Avs and the Wild was about as crazy as you could get.
Yeah, that first game was incredible. That like 6-9 game where like they're scoring like 3 in a row and then got the other team scores 3 in a row. Like that was incredible. Like you knew that wasn't going to be the whole series, but
to be fair, you're not far off it.
No, not too far. I mean, like that was, definitely teams tighten up after a game like that, but that, wasn't too far.
So yeah, now 34 goals, 35 goals. Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah,
it's
in a 5-game series,
in a 4-1. In a 4-1, and look, my only thing I'm disappointed in is the game 3 ruined my double sweep predictions.
Yeah.
But look, the Wild were exactly what you would expect the Wild to be. And that included defensively suspect, even with Quinn Hughes.
Yeah.
Because obviously, as I said, Quinn Hughes is great defensively, but also is largely there to move the puck.
Yeah, honestly, I think that it's interesting to see what kind of happened with the Wild this year. Like they were definitely elevated by Hughes coming in. It took this team to another level. I don't know that it would have been this close without him for sure. Like I think that it definitely got them further than they would have otherwise got. I'm not sure that they beat Dallas without Quinn Hughes for sure. With that in mind, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that look at the deal from earlier in the year and kind of go, oh well, they didn't win the cup or whatever. Like that was never the benchmark. They have another year of Quinn Hughes. They're apparently already in talks to extend. I think that if all things considered, despite what they gave up, like this was a pretty big win for the Wild.
It's it's really interesting to see because like if they don't get the Hughes contract done in the off season, they might need to move him.
Well, I mean, look, it's possible.
Right. Well, this is the thing. If they can't get a Quinn Hughes deal done in the off season, do you really want to take Quinn Hughes the length of another season? with the idea of, well, he's going to walk. And like, so you now are literally all or nothing.
Yeah,
Like,
I'd be surprised if they don't get it done. That said, like they're going to have an interesting kind of structure going forward, because obviously they've got that $17 million Kaprizov deal that comes in next year. You know, they've got a lot of guys coming off the books. You know, a lot of old guys. You know, Tarasenko, Foligno, Matt Zuccarello, those kind of guys coming off the books. You know, they could. You know, have a bit of a kind of youth movement coming in. They could potentially, you know, shuffle things around a little bit. I don't know exactly what this team is going to look like, you know, coming into next year. They can definitely afford to pay Quinn Hughes. What the team looks like beyond that, I don't know yet. You know, is it going to be another, you know, Toronto situation where they end up with, you know, giant, you know, deals? Like, do they pay Quinn Hughes another 16 million or whatever and then have 30 something million tied up between those two players?
Well, this is the issue, is that Quinn Hughes contract is going to be huge. It's going to be huge.
Yeah, huge.
It's going to be huge. He can ask for whatever he wants.
That's
a lot of money to commit to two players. And like, they don't have a hell of a lot of space. Like, they don't even, like, next year, what have we got? Next year at the moment, cap space wise, remember the cap will be going up, obviously. So we're looking at they've got, I don't really, I'm looking at their projected cap space for next year. It's cap projection for next year. There's 13 million. There's 48 million going forward. So there will be money there, but like, they've got to re-sign a lot of players. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, how much does Quinn Hughes take? Does he give a discount, or does he look at this and go,
yeah, I mean, given that, like, I wouldn't be shocked if it's you know, 12, 13 plus.
I mean, I would be staggered if it didn't start with 12 at the least. I'd be staggered. It has to start with a 12 at the least.
I think so. Yeah, at the very least.
I think the Wild are really interesting because they've done a hell of a lot to fix up what was a cap hell. You know, they took their medicine a few years ago, and like with the Parise and Suda buyouts and stuff like that, they're down to basically negligible cap hits to this point. They're 1.6 for the next couple of years. That's really nothing when you look at what the cost is now. So taking the medicine early and taking the bigger hits early was worth it. But now, as a result, there's a lot of things, and like, I mean, probably the best thing they've got going on that roster, to be blunt, is that Matt Boldy contract is
very good,
genius. Like, that's $7 million for Matt Boldy. The interesting part about the Matt Boldy contract is it's not fully protected. It's not fully protected, so it's movable as well. That's an interesting one. They're not going to move it, but it is movable. But that's just an interesting little tidbit of information there. We'll talk about the Wild in a little bit more. We'll talk about the Avalanche in a little bit more, obviously, when we get to talking about the conference finals. Vegas and Anaheim. This was a story of, as I mentioned before, so people have been mentioning a certain goaltender and look at his save percentage going through the roof. The biggest difference between this and Vegas's first round was that Vegas's defense dropped a bit deeper in their zone to make sure that there were no rebounds allowed to be put in. That was the difference, right? Because in the first round against LA, it was rebound central, and like, he didn't stop a clean puck, and every rebound was put back past him. And in this series, it wasn't necessarily cleaner. With
Utah. They played Utah in the first round.
Utah, not Vegas. Not what's he, sorry. Yeah, with Utah, it was straight back in. In this series, a bit the same in terms of his puck control, but they just had defensemen deeper. And every time the puck,
I mean, and there was still some terrible games in that, you know, in that series, but they survived it. You know, I think you know, Mitch Marner, a big story, obviously, of
Marner was great.
yeah, that especially, game 6, highlight real goal, but also just generally overall in the series, an incredible, series that, I think that there's been a little narrative for a while that, Mana doesn't turn up in the playoffs and so forth. I think that, he's definitely had some incentive to, to kind of show up with a new team here and make an impact. And he's definitely been their best player in a big way. It's going to be interesting to see. Vegas will probably get Mark Stone back in the next series. I don't know whether that's going to necessarily be enough. They're getting kind of healthier now, but yeah, look, I think that we kind of said, coming into this Vegas Anaheim series that, Anaheim had a puncher's chance, but Vegas, I think, still had their thumb on the scale in terms of overall kind of quality of team.
It was going to depend on if the Anaheim defense could hold up.
Yeah.
And it didn't. And that's kind of, I think, look, they're not the finished article. Yeah. And we all knew that. And like as I said, the benefit for them against Edmonton was they were pacey and they were the sort of opponent that Edmonton didn't want to see. Right. Yeah. The biggest benefit the Ducks had in the first round was if you were designing an opponent that Edmonton didn't want, you'd kind of draw up the Ducks.
Yeah.
They're fast, they're good puck movement. They don't give you a chance to settle on the puck. They don't give you a chance to sort of, reset. And especially if you are relying on one line being great, they can shut one line down. What they can't do is when a team has the ability to roll multiple lines that look quite dangerous and you can't get a breather. And so you expose those third and fourth lines to more meaningful minutes. And that's what, look, Vegas, Mana is obviously a superstar, but in terms of Vegas has always done things by committee, and it's always just been a group effort to roll over the top of you. And basically what ended up happening was that it exposed the gaps in the Ducks lines, and the Ducks couldn't maintain the pressure. Obviously, that's something that they're going to try to address in the offseason, try to add some more defense and just add a bit more toughness and a bit more. And when I say toughness, again, I don't mean toughness as in let's go fight. I mean toughness in players that have been there and sort of understand how to get over the line in these sorts of games. That's what
I think Vegas, not Vegas. I think Anaheim did a really good job in taking a big step forward this year in terms of being an actually competitive team. They obviously they weren't a playoff team for the last few years, and I think that it would be hard not to look at the season that they had and not consider it a huge success. To make it to the second round of the playoffs, having we're not really close to even being a playoff team last year. They've taken some kind of big steps forward for a team that really for the last 5 to 10 years has been kind of it's going to be the end of the rebuild soon. We've got these young exciting players coming through that hadn't really kind of taken that step. So look, it's nice to see them actually having this second batch of young players actually kind of hitting in terms of Seneki and Gauthier and those kind of players who, kind of took over from, players like Zagras and Terry and stuff who kind of weren't that first, run of young players who are going to be their core. So
I think in the end. I mean, look, I'm bracing myself for years of Sharks versus Ducks wars.
Yeah.
That's coming, and it's not going to be pretty for anybody. Speaking of not pretty for anybody, Flyers versus Hurricanes. It took until game 4 for the Hurricanes to go behind in a playoff game.
Yeah, they didn't have
they never trailed.
They didn't give up a lead. They didn't give up a lead for 2.5 weeks. And never in this series until the last game.
They never trailed. Until they got to game 4 and the Flyers scored, and everyone went, oh, okay. And it was a little bit like, in The Simpsons where Nelson's like, you made me bleed my own blood.
Yeah.
It just felt so weird that they were behind and then they weren't. And then
no, I mean, look, I think it was kind of disappointing. The Flyers were just never in this series. There was kind of talk of them oh, isn't it great that they're doing well, they're winning together through the power of friendship and all this kind of stuff. And then just the moment that they came into this series, it just just like a fucking wet fart being let out of a bag. They
Carolina
were just
came out
never
and they're
in
like,
this series whatsoever.
Carolina came out and they're like, we're trying. And Carolina's like, I see you, sweetie.
Yeah, you're doing
and then
great.
just
Well done.
gulped them into the ground.
Yeah.
Like the Hurricanes are just like, and I think it's the same is very true of, and I think a lot of people are going to take. I think a lot of people are going to look at that Colorado result and go, oh, well, you know, like, look at what the Wild were able to do to the Avalanche. I would put forward that probably the only team that was really geared to be able to score anything against the Avs in this playoff that was left was the Wild.
Yeah.
I don't think that another team is geared to do anything like that to the Avs, and I think we're going to see that. With the Hurricanes, they don't have superstars. But we talked about Vegas are a team that just has traditionally rolled over the top of you, and just Carolina just don't let you breathe.
Yeah.
They just don't let you breathe.
Yeah, they just run 4 lines that just dominate you every shift.
They're not flashy. They're not showy. They're not going to go out there and like look amazing and look fantastic. And they're not going to have a McDavid shift where he goes out and gets 4 goals in 4 shots. And they're not going to do any of that. But they're just going to choke the absolute life out of you. And by the time you look at the scoreboard in the third, you're going to go, how the hell are we 3 down?
Yeah.
But you'll be 3 down. Like, you will absolutely be 3 down. And they just suffocate. And like, we should be talking about the Flyers, but there's nothing really to talk about with the Flyers.
There's nothing really to say. Like, they just
2 games went to overtime, and at no point did I consider the Hurricanes were losing a game.
No, it never seemed like the Hurricanes were not going to win. It's
like
just
they were almost trying to get more ice time.
Yeah, it's like it was a little bit like playing with your little brother and just kind of letting them score a couple because you know that eventually at any point in time you can just turn it on and win.
You know, you're playing international teams on NHL, and like, you know, you let your brother play as Canada and you're playing as like Italy.
Yeah,
yeah, we got this. Yeah,
you know? It's fine. I mean, look, in a similar way that we talked about Anaheim, obviously the Flyers took, a pretty big step forward to actually being a playoff team in some degree.
And if they listen to their fan base, they'll still sack the coach.
Yeah, probably. And look, I think that they probably made it further than they realistically, probably should have. They put together, a great defensive effort, but they're still not like, a real competitor. I think that some people are going to criticize and say like, oh, you're a Pittsburgh fan. Obviously, you're going to say this about Philadelphia. I don't think that Pittsburgh stood a chance against Carolina either. Either team that got into this series was going to get stomped. I do think that honestly, it would have been more interesting to watch if it ended up being Carolina and Pittsburgh. I think that they at least would have kind of gone down fighting in some interesting way. I really felt like the Flyers just kind of weren't really in this series at any point in time.
I feel like it would have been a better series. I think it would have been the same result.
Yeah, I think it might not have been a sweep. It might have. But I just think it would have been more interesting to watch. The Flyers just play that. I think especially like the Hurricanes and the Flyers, they both play an incredibly defensive, like structured kind of game, at least currently. And it just the combination of that is just the most fucking boring thing to watch in the world.
Speaking of not boring, the Habs versus the Sabres was not boring.
No,
nothing in this series was dull. The Habs
absolutely
win
wild.
7 in overtime in Game 7, with possibly for the second time in 2 series, a team that just lacked consistent goaltending. And there are going to be Habs fans who are going to be like, we caused that, we caused the problems, and you're jealous and you can't get over. If the Sabres manage to get some saves in Game 6 and Game 7, this doesn't go there, because
it's absolutely wild. Like the luck for the Habs are having is insane. How long it will last, I don't know.
It's like the COVID year where they made the final and fell over.
Yeah, it's very much that. Like it's really just a matter of at what point that luck fails them, because it hasn't so far. Like they won Game 7 against Tampa with a 31% expected goal for percentage. They won game
It was
7
amount of shots, wasn't
against,
it? It was like 9 shots,
yeah,
wasn't it?
9 shots on goal. And they won against Buffalo with a 35% expected goals for percentage. So
And
slightly better.
one of the worst attempted saves in an overtime period I think I've ever seen.
Absolutely awful.
I
But
felt
it
bad
doesn't
for
matter because they won. So
exactly.
you know, like that's hockey. Unfortunately, like that's
Yeah,
you just
like
win, baby. Just go out there and
congratulations
win.
to Habs. You through to a conference final. Well done.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I mean, like wild. You know, incredible that they've been able to get this far. You know, basically in games that they didn't deserve to win, but they won anyway. So
yeah,
that's really all that matters. Sometimes this is the thing in playoff hockey. Sometimes you
doesn't matter.
have to win games you don't deserve to win, to
Look,
win the cup. Like,
my favorite Sharks win of all time is that Vegas game where we did not deserve to win. We were
yeah.
absolutely terrible. And then maybe Logan Couture goes down a bit softly and gets a double minor for him. And the next thing you know, we go on this absolute rampage and beat Vegas. And Vegas like, you didn't deserve that. And we're like, no, we didn't. But
No,
like,
I mean, like this is the thing, like the Penguins Cup in 2017 against Nashville, like they probably didn't deserve to beat Washington. They kind of got wrecked in that series, but they won. Like that's all you got to do. So you know, props to the Habs. You know, incredible story. I've got a bunch of friends who are Habs fans that are enjoying the shit out of it. But you know, Habs it's just fucking wild. I feel sorry for the Sabres because like as much as I don't think I would pick the Sabres against Carolina, I think that they're probably the team that deserved to make it out of that side of the bracket. You know, they were a pretty, you know, kind of impressive team. Unfortunately, they got some shitty goaltending in the final game of the series, and that was kind of all it really took.
I think what's really interesting about the Habs, and again, look, I'm prepared to take the Flames at this point in time because why not? We hear a lot about the Habs and their defense, and you know, like they've got the greatest defenseman to ever walk the face of the earth, apparently. And defensively, they've been terrible. Like they've been genuinely terrible.
They're really
And
playing running gun hockey.
I'm not saying that Hudson's bad defensively at all.
No,
but they're not playing a structure.
Yeah,
that is.
I mean, Dovish is bailing the shit out of them. Really,
yeah.
Like
they are not playing a structure that is vaguely defensively good.
no.
And I think they can't play the game they played against the Sabres against the Hurricanes, because I think that Carolina will see the Habs just throwing everyone forward. They will just hold their structure, and then they will take advantage of the fact that everyone from the Habs is up here and just go down the other end and score.
Yeah.
Not because they're flashy, but because I think the Habs need more structure to take on the Hurricanes. I think that just flying around the ice and trying to sort of be this fast offensive, you know, not structure. We just move around the ice and we're really exciting. I don't think that does anything against a team that just stands in their formation and goes, come on.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get that many high danger chances against Carolina.
And Freddie Anderson this series so far, this playoff so far, is the favorite. One of the favorites. He's the non Avalanche favorite.
Yeah,
non Colorado favorite for the gone blank.
The Conn Smythe.
Conn Smythe. There we are.
I knew you were getting that.
I knew what you were getting at. For the record, everybody, I've been sick all week. This is the first day I've got a voice.
We were going to record last night, but it just wasn't going to happen.
I couldn't do it. So tonight's the first night I can actually do it. He's the favorite for the Conn Smythe that's not called Nathan McKinnon or Carl McCarr.
Yeah.
Freddie Anderson's been great. I would be shocked if he turns into a pumpkin. He could, because it's Freddie Anderson, and you never know. But
yeah, I mean, look, as we've seen, goalies can totally shit the bed, and they've consistently done it against Montreal. Maybe Montreal has a superpower to get goalies off their game. I don't think it's true. I think they're just really fucking lucky, but we'll see.
I'm gonna pick the Hurricanes in. Do I do it? Yeah, I do it. I'm going to pick the Hurricanes in 4. Sweep again.
It was incredible for the Hurricanes to make it to the Cup final having not lost a game. That would be.
Do I think, by the way, it will actually be a sweep? No, but
No.
my God, I'm going to feel good if I predicted it's right.
Yeah, I know it's great. I don't know if it's going to be too far off though. I'm going to say Carolina in 5.
Yeah, that's fair. And we didn't predict the West because I think we want to talk about that a little bit more because we've talked about everybody except the Avalanche.
Quickly before we go to that, I will say, like, how funny would it be though, however, if Carolina wins the next 3 and then Montreal, like, you know, it's like goes to overtime of game 4 and Montreal manages to like kill their streak of like getting,
it would be hilarious.
Yeah, and then they just get destroyed the next game.
But then it would be very funny if that happens and then in game 5 they come out and like concede 8.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
The Hurricanes are just like again.
Yeah.
Again. The Avs, we haven't talked about the Avs, and there's a reason we haven't talked about the Avs is because I don't care if they drop the game. I absolutely believe that the Avalanche are the best team left in these playoffs. And
for sure.
We've talked about the fact that Carolina have been a machine, and they very much have been a machine. But the Avalanche are a machine that has Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar.
Yeah.
And that's a different machine altogether because you've got a monotony that just goes over, and then you've got superstars.
Yeah.
And when needed, like that Nathan McKinnon goal the other day to send it to overtime in game 5, when they were dead and the Wild were going to get over the line and they got it back to 3-2, and then McKinnon just standing and like that shot. That shot that he gets in with I think it's a minute 20 remaining, and it's just Nathan McKinnon just decided he was scoring. Like the puck comes around, he's got an angle, he looks up, there's players over there, the goalie's there, he looks up and goes, "Oh, that part of the net, whack!" And there was no chance, absolutely no chance. McKinnon just went me.
I love that it was the shot that he missed in the Olympics though. Like it was the perfect redemption arc of like I'm not going to fucking do this again.
And all the Canadian fans going, could have done that a couple of months ago.
Yeah, come on, man. No, I mean, so look, I think that the path, if it ends up being Colorado and Carolina, which I think is very likely to be in the Cup final, the path for Carolina to win is to have someone that can shut down Nathan McKinnon. Like if you have, if you get this kind of combination of like, well, every time McKinnon's going to be out there, we're going to have Jordan Staal, stapled to his hip and Brett Pesce, hitting him in the back or whatever, and they manage to shut him down. I do think that Carolina have a chance in that series, but definitely I think, Colorado are the class of the remaining teams. They were the class of all of the teams coming into the playoffs. They're the favorites for a reason. That said, I think Vegas have a puncher's chance against them. But I think my first instinct is Colorado in 6.
I think Colorado in 5. I genuinely think that. I think because it sounds weird to say because they've lost one game. I think a lot of people they've lost one game, but B, they're in the West, and I think a lot of people are just we expect Colorado to be good.
Yeah,
I don't think people appreciate just how good the Avs are. And I think a lot of people haven't really watched a lot of the Avs in these playoffs. Everyone's been watching, I know there are so many people watching the Habs and going, oh, the Habs are the vibes team. And my God, the Habs are amazing. And this is the Habs season. And Carolina. And there's a lot of Carolina are as good as we thought they could be, even better. Oh my God, Carolina. Obviously, Tortorella and Vegas have been the story and they're always in the media and they're always in the headlines. The Colorado Avalanche are just an amazing hockey team. And they are an amazingly built franchise. And, remember, what did they do at the trade deadline? How do we build we'll just go back and get the guy who played second line center when we won the Cup last time, and we'll bring him back for nothing.
Yeah.
Right? Kadri's back for it cost nothing to get Nazem Kadri back. Right?
Yeah.
Like they just went, oh yeah, we'll bring you back. Oh yeah, we'll bring you back. Oh yeah, we've got this team that's great, and we're running away with the top of the league. But you know what we might do? Just get better.
Yeah.
And
I do feel like, I feel like Vegas would have a better chance in this series if they go back to Aiden Hill, but they've shown so far that they're just not interested in doing that. And
No,
I
he's made his
don't
decision.
I don't really understand why. I think they're locked in on Carter Hart, and I do hope that it's the decision that buries them.
I think that having a goaltender who's actually been there and done it and is more reliable in net rather than trying to make a point would make sense. But this is John Tortorella.
Yeah.
And John Tortorella believes in making a point above everything else. I just feel like I feel like Vegas Vegas doesn't have enough. I know that Mitch Marner's been amazing, but if you can shut Mitch Marner down, I kind of feel like that stifles a lot of the offense. And I know Eichel's been good, but
if they can get Mark Stone back and stuff like that, I think they've got a chance. But
they've got a chance. But I think the scoring in that team runs through Marner. I know there's points all over the place, but the scoring in that team runs through Marner. And I think if you can shut Mitch Marner down, and look, if I'm going to trust anybody to do that job, I think Karmakar's pretty good. That probably goes a long way to stifling Vegas's offense, because like one of the things that you will say about Tortorella is that Tortorella has stopped playing him at center, playing him back out on the wing and going, we're just going to let Mitch run around and score goals, which is good. That's kind of good. That is good. I'll give Tortorella credit for that. He's done something. Cassidy was trying to make him a center, play him as a winger and tell him to go score. That makes sense. But that also opens him up to being shut down. And I think you can shut him down a bit more. And then I just think, again, anyone who doesn't believe that Nathan McKinnon is the best player currently playing in these playoffs needs to like watch a bit more hockey, because Nathan McKinnon is out of this world. Yeah. Like he is so good. And I'm personally a bit disappointed that I feel like they're going to give the Hart to McDavid, and I feel like this should be McKinnon Hart. But we'll see what happens with that, obviously, because they're getting through all those awards at the moment. That's going to do us, I think, for this episode. So we will be back when we have a Stanley Cup final to preview.
Yeah, no, it shouldn't be too long, week or two.
We'll see. I'll be interested to see. It could be really funny after all these long and drawn out series that have gone forever if we just get 2 sweeps.
Yeah, it'd be wild if we're just like over and done with like the whole playoffs by like early June.
Yeah, like everything's done, and like we're just sitting there waiting for the draft. Oh no, don't do that, because if we're just sitting there waiting for the draft extra long, there's more think pieces.
Yeah.
Which defensemen are going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5?
Do we have a date? Do we have a date for the draft?
When is Gavin McKenna getting drafted, and why is it 15? Or the Sharks will pick up Gavin McKenna with the 19th pick. Something like that.
Okay, so it is June 20. All right, so we've got just a little bit over. We've got like 5 weeks from now until the draft.
Yep, there's 5 more weeks of think pieces.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe the next. Maybe we get 3 or 4 weeks out of the playoffs from this point in time.
How many weeks until Caleb Malhotra becomes the number 1 universal pick? I go 2.
Yeah.
I reckon in 2 weeks' time there'll be a think piece that maybe Caleb Malhotra is the way forward for the Leafs.
Yeah.
I think it's coming. So anyway, we will leave you there. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. Again, please share it around. We love it when people give us extra comments on what we do. We know most people, we get a lot of views later on, obviously, because people are doing whatever they want. But thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you all later.
See ya.